"You're kidding me, this is where you're sending me today," Yates Granger muttered, wiping the sweat off his forehead as he stared up at the towering glass facade of the Serene Falls luxury spa. He wasn't dressed for the place: worn jeans, steel toe boots, a tool belt slung low on his waist, but someone had to fix the power outage that had shut down half the spa's services. And that someone was him. Again. Because when you're a single dad with bills stacked higher than your kids' Lego towers, you take whatever jobs come in. Yates grabbed his toolbox from the back of his rusted-out truck and slammed the door shut. It groaned like it might fall off. He gave it a pat. "Don't die on me today." Inside, the spa looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers, orchids in every corner, walls of soft sandstone and gold. The kind of place where rich people paid someone to rub oils on them while listening to waterfall sounds. He walked up to the front desk, catching the way the receptionist's nose twitched at the sight of him. "Power's out in the treatment wing." "Yes," she said, barely looking at him. "Third floor, and please try not to be seen." Yates rolled his eyes and took the service elevator. Upstairs, he got to work, crouched down behind a panel of wires in the hallway. He was halfway through rewiring a junction box when he heard footsteps, and then a voice, low, female, and sharp with irritation. "I don't care if the press is waiting. I'm not giving an interview while the lights are flickering like a haunted house." He looked up and froze. She was standing just down the hall, phone in hand, heels clicking as she paced. Her black pencil dress looked like it cost more than his truck. She had power in her walk, confidence in her voice, but her expression shifted when she noticed him. "Oh," she said, hanging up. "You're the electrician?" "Yeah," Yates stood, brushing off his hands. "Name's Yates." "Power should be back in 5 minutes." She walked over, her eyes on his hands, then on his face. "You're not from the company we usually hire." "I freelance," he said simply. "They called me in when your usual guy bailed." Her gaze lingered. "You've got grease on your cheek." He wiped it off with the back of his wrist. "Comes with the job." She gave a small, amused breath. "I'm Malia Anderson. I run this place." Yates blinked. "You're the manager." "I'm the CEO," she corrected, folding her arms. "Owner, actually." He let out a low whistle. "Didn't think CEOs wore heels that high." She arched a brow. "Didn't think electricians noticed." He grinned. "I notice a lot." Malia's lips twitched. "If the lights are fixed, I owe you a thank you." As if on cue, the hallway lights surged back to life. Malia glanced up at them, then back at him. "You don't owe me anything," Yates said, already packing up his tools. "Just doing my job," but she didn't move. "You always work alone, pretty much. I've got a son to take care of, makes scheduling easier when I'm my own boss." Her expression softened just for a second. "You're a dad." "Yeah, his name's Asher, he's 6. Wild about dinosaurs and eats peanut butter like it's a food group." Something flickered in her eyes, like she was trying not to smile. "That's kind of adorable." Yates slung his toolbox over his shoulder. "He's the best thing I've ever made." Malia tilted her head. "You don't talk like most contractors." "Is that a compliment?" "It might be." They locked eyes for a beat too long. She cleared her throat. "Well, I appreciate your help. If we ever need emergency work again, you know where to find me." He started walking away, then stopped. "Hey, Malia," she looked up. "Yeah, nice meeting you," her lips curved. "Likewise." The next morning, Yates was back in his tiny kitchen, flipping pancakes while Asher sat at the table, swinging his legs and humming. "Can I put extra syrup today?" Asher asked. "Just a little," Yates said, tossing a paper towel at him playfully. His phone buzzed just as he sat down. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer until he heard her voice. "Yates, it's Malia Anderson." He sat up straighter. "Hey, everything okay?" "Yeah." "I was wondering if you're available for some more work. Not electrical this time, something else." "What kind of work?" "Have lunch with me." He blinked. "That sounds more like a date than a job." There was a pause. "Maybe it is." His heart kicked. "You sure about that?" "I don't ask out strangers, but you didn't feel like a stranger." Yates glanced at Asher, who was now making a syrup volcano on his pancake. "I've got my son today," he said. "No sitter, bring him," she said. "I'd like to meet the peanut butter monster." 2 hours later, Yates walked into the rooftop terrace of Serene Falls, in jeans and a clean button-down he hadn't worn in years. Asher held his hand, eyes wide as he looked around at the view. Malia was already seated at a private table, dressed in a soft blue blouse and wide-leg trousers that made her look like she'd walked off a magazine cover. But when she saw them, she stood and smiled like she'd been waiting all day. "You must be Asher," she said, crouching down. "I heard you love dinosaurs." "Triceratops are cool," Asher said, clearly unsure if she was a real grown-up or some kind of rich fairy. She laughed. "Mine too." Lunch was grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, fresh lemonade. Asher got chicken fingers with a side of fruit carved into stars. Yates watched as Malia asked his son about school, art class, favorite dinosaurs. She didn't fake interest. She listened, and then her eyes met Yates's across the table. "You're not like anyone I've ever met before," he smiled. "That's funny." "I was thinking the same thing about you." She leaned in. "Can I see you again?" "Yeah," he said, voice low. "You can." And just like that, something shifted. Neither of them said the word for it yet, but it was there. Right in the space between her hand and his, almost touching across the linen tablecloth. The first thing Yates noticed when he arrived at the address Malia had given him a few days later was the gate, wrought iron, tall, and guarded by a sleek security panel. He hesitated in his beat-up truck, glancing at the manicured hedges lining the drive and the rows of white hydrangeas blooming like they were arranged by an artist. He reached out, pressed the call button. "Mr. Granger." A voice came through the speaker. Yeah." "That's me." The gate opened without another word. As he pulled through, Asher leaned forward in the passenger seat, eyes wide. "Is this a castle?" "Feels like it, doesn't it?" The house or estate was perched on a hill, all clean lines and glass walls, with a stone terrace that looked like it belonged in a travel magazine. A woman in a navy uniform waved from the entrance and guided them to park near the guest wing. Malia was already outside. She wasn't in heels this time. White sneakers, loose trousers, and a pale linen shirt that made her look like she belonged on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Her hair was pulled back, not a strand out of place. "Hi," she said, voice easy. "Glad you found it." Yates climbed out. "I almost turned around twice." "Why?" He gestured vaguely toward the architecture. "Didn't know if we were walking into a movie set or an embassy." She laughed, then lowered her gaze to Asher. "Hi again." He gave a shy wave, then tugged at his dad's arm. "Can I ask her if she has any dinosaurs?" Malia crouched down. "I do have a pool. Does that count?" He blinked. "Can I see it?" She looked up at Yates for permission. He nodded, and she led them around the side of the house. The backyard opened up into a long stretch of green, flanked by trimmed lemon trees and shaded seating areas. The pool was an infinity design, water sliding over the edge like a waterfall into the horizon. Beyond it, the hills rolled down toward the city. "I didn't know people actually lived like this," Yates muttered. Malia turned. "I didn't always." He looked at her. "No, my parents ran a bakery in New Jersey. We lived above it. First time I saw a house with more than one bathroom, I was 17. Yates leaned back on his heels. "So you built all this yourself?" She nodded once. "From the ground up." Asher was already kicking off his shoes by the pool, eyes glowing. Malia glanced at Yates again. "There's a guest house just down the path. You're welcome to stay for lunch again." Less formal this time. "Is that how you always invite people over? Offer them a guest house?" "No," she said, folding her arms. "Just you." He tilted his head. "Why's that?" "Because you don't look at any of this like it means something." "And I like that." She led him to the terrace, where a long wooden table was set with pitchers of lemonade, grilled flatbreads, and bowls of chilled fruit. It was shaded by white linen canopies that fluttered in the breeze. Asher sat at one end with a plate already full, happily distracted. "You know," Yates said, taking a seat beside her, "if you wanted to impress me, you already did that with the chicken fingers shaped like stars." She smiled. "That was for him, I know, that's why it worked." They ate, and the conversation drifted to books. She read memoirs. He liked mystery novels. She hated olives. He couldn't eat cilantro. Every answer surprised them a little. Every laugh came easier than the last. Then she leaned in just slightly. "What did you do before?" He hesitated. "Before what? Before being your own boss?" "I was in the army," he said after a pause. "Mechanical systems, mostly overseas." She blinked, caught off guard. "You never mentioned that. Didn't come up. Did you like it? Parts of it. Structure. Purpose." But it takes a toll. She watched him carefully. How long were you in? 8 years. Got out when Asher was born. She nodded slowly. His mom passed away during labor, he said quietly. It was just the two of us after that. She didn't flinch or offer a sorry that felt empty. She just placed her glass down, then looked at him in a way that made his chest feel too tight. You're raising a good kid. I'm trying. You're doing more than trying. He looked at her. Why are you really spending time with us? Her expression didn't change. Because you're the first man I've met in a long time who looks at me like I'm a person, not a headline. He leaned back, letting the breeze hit his face. I won't lie, Malia. This world of yours, it's not mine. I'm not asking you to live in it, she said. Just visit it with me. They didn't speak for a while after that. Asher came running back, dripping wet and wrapped in a towel that was probably softer than Yates's best blanket. The boy beamed. Can we come back? Yates looked at Malia. That up to you, she nodded once. It is. And yes, he ruffled his son's hair. Then I guess we'll be seeing you again. Malia met his eyes, quiet and sure. I hope so. As they left, she didn't stop them, didn't reach for a kiss or press for a promise. But when the gate closed behind them and Yates glanced in the rearview mirror, she was still standing there, watching them drive away. Not like someone who had money to burn, but like someone who had finally found something she didn't want to lose. Yates stood outside a towering glass building downtown, dressed in the only clean blazer he owned. He shifted on his feet, gripping the folder in his hand tighter than necessary. The last time he'd worn a tie had been to a memorial. Now, the knot hung awkwardly against his collar, itching like it didn't belong. The building's sleek entrance glowed under gold lettering. Anderson Venture Holdings. He hadn't expected Malia's invitation to that charity gala to come with a handwritten note and an enclosed name badge. Guest of the CEO, it had said. Formal attire required. I'll be waiting. He adjusted the badge now as a woman in a headset waved him through the private side entrance. Inside, the atrium gleamed with marble floors and a chandelier shaped like falling leaves. Guests in tailored suits and couture gowns sipped champagne as soft jazz drifted through the air. Yates felt like a mechanic who'd wandered into a museum. Then he spotted her. Malia stood near the central fountain, speaking with a group of board members. She wore a midnight blue gown with a sharp, asymmetrical neckline, her hair twisted up in an elegant knot. Diamonds sparkled at her ears, but her expression was calm, composed until her eyes found him. He saw the shift immediately. Her posture softened, her lips parted. She excused herself and crossed the room in measured steps, stopping only when she was close enough for him to see the flecks of gold in her eyes. You came, you invited me. Still, she said, this isn't exactly your scene. I figured that out when the valet asked if I was lost. She laughed, quiet and genuine. You clean up well. He looked down at his jacket. I borrowed this from a neighbor. He's shorter than me, but it was either this or a leather coat with paint stains. She stepped closer. I'm glad you're here. He glanced around. You running this whole thing? I organized the entire fundraiser, she said. It supports transitional housing for women leaving abusive situations. His eyebrows lifted. That's not the kind of cause most CEOs champion. It's personal, she said softly. My college roommate was one of those women. She got out because one person stepped in when it counted. He didn't ask more. The look in her eyes said enough. A server approached with 2 glasses of champagne. Yates reached for one, then paused. You still want to be seen with the guy whose truck leaks oil? She held his gaze. I asked you here because I wanted you here, not because I needed another name on a guest list. He took the glass. They walked to the edge of the terrace where the city lights stretched like a river of stars. She leaned against the railing, the wind catching the edge of her gown. You know, he said, I never expected any of this. You wanting to spend time with me, bringing Asher around, inviting me here. Why not? He hesitated. Because the people in your world don't usually see people like me. I do. He looked at her then. Why? I've had people fall for my name, for my money, for what I could give them. You're the first man who saw me before any of that. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a folded slip of paper. This is for you. He opened it. A bid card. Item 12, he asked. A summer engineering camp scholarship. It's for kids who have shown aptitude in mechanics. I thought maybe Asher would like it. He stared at her. You didn't even know him a month ago. I know enough to understand he's curious and bright. He takes after you. He exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. The music shifted behind them and people began drifting toward the dance floor. She extended her hand. Dance with me, he hesitated. I haven't danced since high school, she smiled, patient. Good. Then you won't have any bad habits. He took her hand, calloused and warm against her soft fingers, and followed her into the crowd. The band played a slow, classic tune. He placed one hand at her waist, the other holding hers, and tried not to step on her dress. You're stiff, she teased. I'm trying not to embarrass you. You couldn't if you tried. They moved together slowly, her body fitting against his like it had always belonged there. He breathed her in something floral but grounded, like jasmine, and something deeper. He cleared his throat. You're not afraid of what people will say. You, dancing with a guy who changes light fixtures and drives a truck held together by duct tape. She looked up. Let them talk. They don't know what it feels like to be seen this clearly. He swallowed hard. Malia, this thing between us, whatever it is, it's not going to be easy. Nothing worth it ever is. His hand tightened at her back. I don't want to be something temporary in your life. Then don't be. The music faded, but they didn't stop moving. Her hand stayed against his chest, and his breath caught when her fingers brushed over the scar near his collarbone. I want more than just moments with you, she said. He nodded, heart thudding. You have them. From across the room, a photographer raised a camera. Yates tensed, but Malia didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned up and pressed her lips to his cheek. Let them take the picture. Let the whole world see. Yates stood at the edge of the city park's garden pavilion, watching Asher race down a gravel path lined with wildflowers. The sun filtered through the trees in golden shafts, catching the boy's laughter as he darted between rose bushes and wooden benches. Just beyond the hedges, a string quartet rehearsed for the evening's benefit concert, their soft notes drifting through the warm May air. Malia walked up beside him, holding 2 glasses of iced tea, her heels crunching lightly over the gravel. She handed him one without a word. Today, she wore a sleeveless ivory blouse tucked into soft gray culottes, her hair down in loose waves. She looked relaxed in a way he hadn't seen before, like she'd finally let go of something heavy. I didn't know you liked classical music, Yates said, taking a sip. I don't really, she replied, but I like this place. It feels honest. He glanced at her. You've been quiet since the gala. Malia let out a slow breath. I met with my board the next morning. They want me to step back for a few months, said I'm too distracted. Are you? She turned toward him. I've been running at full speed since I was 20. Maybe slowing down isn't the worst thing. You're thinking about walking away. Not forever. But I'm starting to see that success doesn't mean anything if you're too busy to live your life. He studied her profile, the way her fingers curled around the cold glass. You're not the same woman I met at that spa. That woman thought she had to control everything or it would all fall apart. What changed? You, she said simply. And Asher. Before he could respond, Asher came bounding back with a pebble in his palm. It looks like a dinosaur tooth. Malia crouched down to examine it. That's definitely a fierce one. Yates reached for his son's shoulder. Hey, bud, why don't you go show that to the musicians? Maybe they'll play you a dinosaur song. Asher sprinted off without hesitation, and Malia stood again, brushing her hands together. She looked at Yates. There's something else I need to tell you, he straightened. All right. I've been offered a position in London. A leadership role with a global philanthropy organization. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. His jaw tightened. And you're taking it? I haven't decided yet. You could run that kind of organization in any city, he said, voice low. I could, but this one comes with prestige, influence. It's the kind of job people fight for. He looked away, jaw working. Then maybe I'm not the kind of person who fits into that life. Don't do that, she said, stepping closer. Don't write yourself out of my future like you're not already part of it. You've got the world at your feet, and I've never once cared about any of it the way I care about what's real. She reached for his hand. And you, Yates Granger, are the most real thing I've ever had. He swallowed hard. If you go, what happens to us? I don't want to go without you or him. He stared at her, stunned. You're saying you'd stay. I'm saying I'm not leaving behind what matters, she said, her voice firm. I don't care if I have to rebuild everything from scratch. I want a life that includes Asher's school concerts and your pancakes. I want a life that fits us." He looked down, struggling to breathe past the tightness in his chest. "I never thought I'd be the reason someone turned down the world." "You're not the reason," she said softly. "You're the choice." The string quartet began playing something light and hopeful, and Asher ran back toward them, waving his arms. "They said I could help them tune." Malia crouched again. "Then you better make sure they sound perfect." He darted away again, and Yates watched him go, heart full and aching. He turned to her. "You're sure about this?" "I've never been more sure." He took a step closer, cupping her jaw gently. "Then I guess I have something to say." "Don't wait." "I love you," he said, voice rough. "I didn't see it coming. I didn't think I could feel it again, but it's there. And I think it hit me the moment you carved fruit into stars just to make my kids smile." She laughed through a sudden tear. "You're going to make me cry in a public garden." He kissed her then, slow and deep, with the kind of certainty that felt like coming home. Later that evening, under strings of amber lights and the rustle of trees, Malia stood beside Yates and Asher as a small group of friends and family gathered under the pavilion. No press, no speeches, just the people who mattered. She wore a simple dress, nothing dramatic. Yates wore the same blazer he'd worn to the gala. Asher wore a bow tie and held the rings. The justice of the peace kept it short. When Yates slid the ring onto Malia's finger, his hands didn't shake. When she whispered her vows, her voice didn't waver. And when Asher cheered louder than anyone, Malia bent down and kissed the top of his head. That night, they didn't drive away in a limo or fly off in a jet. They walked hand in hand beneath the city lights, their son between them, swinging from their arms. And though the world around them never stopped spinning, for once they weren't running to catch up. They were walking toward something real, together. The sun dipped low over the vineyard, casting long, molten shadows across the hills. The rustic stone villa overlooking the rows of grapevines was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves in the breeze and the soft clink of glasses being set on a wooden table. Malia reached for the bottle of chilled white wine and poured 2 glasses, her fingers brushing Yates's as she handed him one. They sat at the edge of the terrace, legs stretched out, the sky painted in hues of amber and rose. Asher was inside with a babysitter Malia had personally vetted, curled up with a stack of new picture books and a bowl of popcorn. It was their first weekend away since the wedding, a quiet escape in the countryside, no press, no events, just them. "I didn't think I'd like this kind of quiet," Malia said, watching a hawk soar in the distance. "Turns out I needed it more than I realized." Yates tilted his head. "You've been breathing easier since you stepped away from the board." "I'm sleeping through the night, if that tells you anything," she said, then added, "I used to wake up at 2 a.m. with my heart racing, thinking about quarterly projections." He traced the rim of his glass with his thumb. "You miss it?" She took a long sip before answering. "Parts of it. But I don't miss the pressure to be someone I'm not. I've been talking with a foundation that focuses on early STEM education in underserved schools. They're looking for someone to lead outreach programs. It's not glamorous, but it's hands-on, purposeful." Yates leaned back in his chair. "That sounds more like you than a skyline office and a boardroom of shareholders." She turned toward him. "You'd be okay with me working again? I married you, not a version of you. Whatever makes you feel whole, I'm behind it. Just don't forget I make a mean breakfast, so don't get too busy to show up for it." She grinned. "Deal." He reached across the table and laced their fingers. "You remember the first time I saw you? You were giving instructions to someone on the phone, pacing like you owned the air around you." "I did own the air," she teased. "You just didn't know it yet. I knew something the moment you looked at me. You weren't just powerful, you were lonely." She blinked, caught off guard. "You saw that?" "Yeah, because I was too." She looked down at their hands, then said softly, "I didn't think I'd ever let someone see me fully. I thought I'd built myself too high to be reached. You didn't need someone to reach you. You needed someone who wouldn't be afraid to climb." He stood then, pulling her up with him. They walked slowly along the edge of the terrace, the vineyard sprawling before them like a painting. Grapevines stretched in neat lines, heavy with early clusters, and the scent of lavender from the garden drifted on the wind. "I've been thinking about something," Malia said after a beat. Yates glanced down at her. That usually means I should brace myself. She nudged him with her shoulder. I want to buy a place up here, just a small one, somewhere Asher can run wild and we can unplug when things get too loud. He looked out at the land. You want a vineyard? No, she said. I want a life that doesn't need to be scheduled 3 months in advance. I want to grow things, real things, not numbers on a spreadsheet. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Then we'll plant whatever you want. I'll build a damn greenhouse if I have to, she laughed, arms circling his waist. That's not a bad idea. You're serious. I am. I want this. You, him, a place where we can just be. He kissed her then, slow and sure, the kind of kiss that didn't need words behind it. When he pulled back, she rested her forehead against his. I love you, she whispered. Not for what you give me or what you fix. I love you because you make space for me to be exactly who I am. And I love you, he said, because you never once made me feel like I had to become someone I'm not. They stayed there until the sun dipped below the hills and the sky turned navy. When they went inside, Asher was fast asleep on the couch, a toy truck clutched in one hand and a half-empty juice box in the other. Malia picked him up gently, pressing a kiss to his forehead before tucking him into the guest room bed. Later, curled up together on the oversized couch, fire flickering in the stone hearth, Malia rested her head against Yates's chest. You ever think about adding to our little crew? She asked, voice soft. He looked down at her. You mean another kid? Maybe. He didn't respond right away. Then, I think Asher would be a great big brother. She smiled against his shirt. He told me he wants a sister who likes bugs and robots. He's got high standards. We all do, she said, lifting her eyes to meet his. But somehow I still ended up with everything I didn't know I needed. He kissed her temple. Then let's build the rest of it, together. They fell asleep like that, no alarms, no plans, just the warmth of each other and the quiet promise of a life fully theirs. 3 years later, the vineyard house was no longer just a dream. It stood proudly on the edge of the valley, surrounded by a riot of lavender and wild strawberries. The greenhouse behind it was filled with herbs and solar panels. A small workshop sat beside it, where Yates repaired everything from old clocks to neighborhood bicycles. Inside, Asher was now 9, taller, and obsessed with astronomy. He was currently in the backyard, setting up a telescope with his stepdad's help, a plastic model of Saturn in one hand and a flashlight in the other. Malia stood in the doorway, her hand resting on her growing belly. She was 6 months pregnant, and even in her oversized flannel shirt and leggings, she looked radiant. Her nonprofit had expanded across 3 counties, partnering with local schools, and she ran it 4 days a week from a sunlit office overlooking the hills. Asher shouted from the yard. It's almost dark. Yates turned and waved at her, then pointed to the sky. First stars out. She stepped onto the porch, smiling as she joined them. And when the 3 of them stood there, wrapped in a blanket beneath the stars, hands linked and hearts full, nothing about their lives felt accidental. They had chosen each other. They had built this brick by brick, moment by moment. And the best part, they were just getting started.